The night they tried to rewrite my life, they called it an intervention, but it felt like a sentencing. The private dining room at the Hawthorne Country Club could have been any boardroom, white tablecloths, dim lighting, and the faint smell of lemon polish. The maitre d' led me in, and there they were, my parents and my older sister, already seated on one side of the long table, like a board of directors waiting to fire an underperforming employee. My name is Lauren Pierce. I'm 34, the difficult daughter of the Pierce family, and until 3 days ago, I was the sole founder of a small agri-tech startup nobody in that room had ever taken seriously. Lauren. My mother inclined her head instead of standing. My father checked his watch even though I was on time. My sister Vanessa, Yale Law and perpetual golden child, angled her phone just so. The chairs had been arranged on purpose. 3 on one side, 1 on the other. I sat opposite them, knowing exactly which side of the table I belonged on. The waiter poured water and left. The door closed with a soft click. My mother, Elaine, slid a small velvet box toward me as if she were presenting a prize. "We want to talk to you about your future," she said. "We're worried, honey." I lifted the lid. Inside was a printed one-way ticket to Phoenix and a paper check already signed by my father, Charles. $5,000. On the memo line, in his neat handwriting, "Fresh Start Fund." "A relocation package," my father added, as if this were an HR meeting. "Seed capital. So you can find something more stable." We found a small complex outside Phoenix, very affordable. You won't have to keep chasing these projects. "These projects have a name," I said. "FieldSense isn't working," Vanessa cut in. "Lauren, you've been at this for years. The Fresno pilot? Disaster. The debt? The stress? You look exhausted. This is us loving you enough to stop enabling you." She positioned her phone on the table, lens facing me. The screen glowed. Of course she wanted the moment on video, a clip for her followers. "Sometimes loving someone means helping them start over," the caption would say. She'd frame it like a tender sacrifice, instead of what it really was. Exile dressed up as concern. "You don't have to thank us now," my mother went on. "Just consider it. We've already told a few people at church you'll be moving. It'll be good for you. No more chasing failing farms and broken sensors. No more embarrassment." There it was, the real word, embarrassment. The Fresno trial had been brutal. 30% of the crop lost because a calibration error sent our moisture readings off. My system had failed once. In my parents' version, it had never worked at all. "Phoenix?" I repeated. "You want me to leave California? Leave the company? Move into some apartment you picked? Live off this check? It's not about control," my father said. "It's about safety. You don't have a husband, no children, no stable job. We're trying to keep you from wasting your best years on something that was never realistic." Vanessa cleared her throat. "Laur, listen, we've all agreed this is the best thing. Mom and Dad can't keep worrying about you. You're always one setback away from a breakdown. Take the help. Go to Phoenix. Close the company. You can work at a firm there, maybe do compliance. Something sensible. They had a script, and they had rehearsed it well. Concern, sacrifice, a staged heartbreak, all of it leading to the same conclusion. Lauren is the problem. My fingers brushed the edge of the check. $5,000. To them, it was generosity. To me, it looked like hush money. "Say something," my mother urged. "We're trying here." What I wanted to say was this. 48 hours ago, a wire transfer with more zeros than you've ever trusted me with hit my business account. Verdant Horizon, a major agri-corporation you name-drop at cocktail parties, signed a binding agreement to acquire FieldSense for $8.3 million. Their CEO, Daniel Rhodes, shook my hand and called me one of the sharpest minds in applied soil data, while you were busy telling your friends I played with gadgets instead of getting a real job. That's what I wanted to say. What I actually did was close the velvet box. People who rewrite your story to keep themselves comfortable don't stop just because you finally have proof. They just find new ways to explain it away. I felt the weight of my phone in my coat pocket. The email from Daniel still starred at the top of my inbox. The term sheet, the signed agreement, the confirmation from my lawyer, the PDF from the bank, all the receipts that said I was not the failure they had spent years insisting I was. They didn't know any of it yet. Not about the acquisition. Not about the director role in Chicago. For the first time in a very long time, I realized I had something more powerful than their approval. I had the record. I slid the box back toward the center of the table and folded my hands. "Thank you," I said, each syllable measured. "It's a lot to process." My mother exhaled. Vanessa's shoulders dropped. My father nodded. They thought they were buying my silence for $5,000 and a one-way ticket to nowhere. What they were really doing was signing the last line of a contract they didn't even know existed, the one where I finally stopped fighting for a seat at their table and started building my own. Before we dive into the rest of this story, remember to subscribe to Storytime, Revenge and Love and turn on the notification bell. Here, we tell the family stories most people whisper about sacrifice, betrayal, and the quiet, lawful revenge of finally drawing your own boundaries. Drop a comment below if any part of this feels too familiar. They like to pretend the country club intervention was the first time they tried to redirect my life. It wasn't. It was only the first time they did it with chairs arranged like a disciplinary hearing. The truth is, the Pierce family had been rehearsing that scene for decades. They didn't keep photo albums, they kept stories. And every story had the same layout. Vanessa was brilliance. I was background. I learned my position early. I was 10 the night I brought home a second-place science fair plaque. I'd spent months soldering, coding, and burning my fingers on a cheap iron. At dinner, I waited for some small acknowledgement. My father glanced at the plaque and chuckled. "She's always tinkering with these little toys." Toys! The word landed harder than any criticism could. That was the first time I saw it, the quick, quiet downgrading of anything I accomplished. Not with anger, with casual certainty. In high school, the pattern sharpened. I won a local grant for a soil mapping project. My mother told her friends, "Lauren's dabbling in science. Every teenage girl needs a hobby." A hobby. She said it while standing next to the display case of Vanessa's debate trophies, each one polished until it gleamed like her future. By college, the rewrite was nearly flawless. I interned at a conservation lab during the worst drought in 20 years, 12-hour days, real data, real pressure. But at dinners, my parents told people, "Lauren's volunteering at a garden program." A garden program. You'd think I spent the summer watering begonias, not calibrating drought response models. And still, I kept trying, kept bringing them news, certificates, emails, hoping one day something would be enough to break through the haze of indifference. It never did. But nothing taught me the truth about my place in their story like the Prescott Gala. Nathan Prescott's foundation had invited me, after hearing about our beta trial. I bought a place, simple navy dress, rehearsed my pitch, and walked in feeling cautiously proud. I didn't even make it to the hors d'oeuvres. A woman approached, smiling politely. "Oh good, can you adjust the landscaping near the fountain? One of the spotlights is crooked." Before I could reply, my father let out a loud laugh. "She does look like she'd be good with the dirt." Heat flooded my neck. Everyone chuckled. No one corrected her. In that single instant, the room reorganized itself around a truth I had refused to see. To them, I wasn't a founder, I wasn't a scientist, I wasn't even fully present. I was scenery. The second blow came 2 years later, Fresno. Our early field sense trial glitched for 72 hours. 29% of the crop was lost. It was brutal, real stakes, real consequences. But for my family, it wasn't an error to learn from. It was confirmation. That night, exhausted, sunburned, and humiliated, I pushed open our front door and found all 3 of them waiting at the kitchen island. My father folded his hands like he was opening a board meeting. "Perhaps," he said, "something more suitable would give you stability." My mother nodded. "Not everyone is built for entrepreneurship." Vanessa popped a strawberry between her teeth and added, "Well, at least you only drowned the vegetables, not yourself." She sent me a meme later. A little cartoon farm underwater. Laughing emoji. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped my phone. That was the night something in me bent, not dramatically, not loudly, just silently, like a crack forming under fresh paint. And yet I still went home for the holidays, still answered their calls, still tried to earn a version of love that always shifted just out of reach. Even when FieldSense was running on a 2-laptop setup with borrowed equipment and a coffee maker that leaked onto the outlet, I kept sending them updates. Look, I fixed the model. Look, we secured a small grant. Look, the pilot's showing promise. I wanted them to say one sentence, just once. We're proud. Instead, the rewrites escalated. Vanessa posted soft filter Instagram stories about supporting a loved one through emotional struggles, always with my blurred silhouette in the background. My mother told me to stop mentioning my company at gatherings because people get uncomfortable when things aren't going well. My father introduced me to a colleague as our creative one, not the accomplished one. Downgrade, minimize, rewrite, repeat, always with a smile. If you've ever been praised just enough to keep trying but not enough to feel seen, you know exactly how that kind of erosion works. Piece by piece, without noticing, you disappear. Ironically, the final crack didn't come from Prescott, or Fresno, or a lifetime of being reassigned to the role of family footnote. It came the night before the country club dinner. I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the acquisition contract I had just signed. $8.3 million. Director role, Chicago. Future. The wire confirmation was open on my screen. My hands were trembling not from excitement, but from something colder. Because the first thought that crossed my mind wasn't I did it. It was, maybe now they'll finally believe me. And that was the moment I understood the real damage. When you spend your whole life being rewritten, even your victories feel like things you must prove to the authors who never included you in the first place. That was the last night I looked over my shoulder, because by morning, the morning after that staged intervention, something inside me had stopped begging for understanding. I woke with a clarity that felt like stepping out of a fog bank, not joy, not triumph, just quiet. Quiet is what happens when a person finally stops trying to fit inside someone else's chapter. The morning after the country club dinner, I woke with the kind of clarity that feels like stepping out of a fog bank. Not joy, not triumph, just quiet. Quiet is what happens when a person finally stops begging to be understood. The first thing I did was open my laptop. The acquisition contract sat in a folder labeled simply FSVH Final Docs. Beneath it were the graph soil moisture recovery over time, machine learning performance charts, calibration corrections, the logs, the error reports, the fixes, the system rebuild. And below those, the email thread with Daniel Rhodes. I scrolled to the top. Lauren, after reviewing the corrected model, we see the long-term potential. Let's talk acquisition. They were clean emails. Professional, respectful. They saw me. I opened the wire confirmation next. 8.3 million. The number didn't make my heart race the way it should have. Success feels numb when you've been conditioned to doubt it. My phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa. Don't forget the relocation timeline. Phoenix apartments fill quickly. Followed by a heart emoji. She had scheduled the message. I could tell. Vanessa liked her narratives pre-packaged. I didn't reply. Instead, I took screenshots. Text. Email. The velvet box photo from last night. The check. The memo line. Fresh start fund. No mention of investment. I put them all in a single digital folder. Pierce narrative, evidence. People think revenge is fire and fury. For women like me, it's paperwork. The manipulation began faster than I expected. By noon, Vanessa's intervention video was already live. Black and white filter. Soft piano music, a somber caption. Sometimes love means helping someone restart, even when it hurts. Pray for my sister. My face blurred in the background. Her, with her perfect hair and perfect lighting, framing herself as the suffering heroine. Thousands of views, hundreds of comments. Stay strong, Vanessa. You're such a good sister. Some people just can't help themselves. She wasn't documenting reality. She was building a character herself as savior, me as burden. And that was when the fear crept in, not fear of losing the company. That part of my life was already decided. No. I feared something quieter, that even with the truth printed, signed, wired, witnessed, their version of my life would spread faster than mine. Narratives have gravity. I knew that too well. My mother called at 1:07 p.m. "Lauren, your sister is devastated. Why didn't you thank your father properly last night?" I stared at the wall. "The check?" I said. "The ticket?" "It's what any loving family would do," she replied quickly, too quickly, her voice tight like she'd rehearsed it. "We're giving you a future. You should show gratitude." A future? I had built one from scratch. I didn't tell her that. I hung up without responding. 10 minutes later, my father emailed me. "Lauren, I've spoken to a colleague in Phoenix who can place you in an entry-level compliance position. It would be a stable start as you reset your life." Reset, they loved that word. Reset meant erasing everything that didn't fit their story. I forwarded the email to my lawyer with no comment. By evening, the manipulation escalated. A voicemail from my mother. "Your sister is worried sick. She keeps saying she might have pushed you too hard. Please call back. We don't want this to get messy." Messy. Not, "We're worried about you." Not, "We want to understand." No, messy as in messy for them. It was astonishing, in a tragic way, how quickly they pivoted from saviors to victims when their plan wasn't immediately obeyed. That night, I sat on the floor of my small apartment, surrounded by printouts, contracts, timestamps, emails. I used to organize them for investor decks. Now I was organizing them for survival. Because I understood something then. My family didn't just want me gone. They wanted the story of me gone too. They wanted to write the Lauren chapter the same way they wrote all chapters, Vanessa-centered, reputation-safe. And if I stayed silent, they would succeed. I gathered everything into a physical binder blue cover, labeled in neat black marker, FieldSense acquisition, full record. Not for court, not yet. But for truth. For me. The real turning point came the next morning. I met with my lawyer, Marisol Sharp, calm, the type of person who speaks in precise sentences. She flipped through the binder page by page. When she reached the check, she paused. 5,000. Memo. Fresh Start Fund. Yes. This wasn't an investment. No. Good, she said, closing the folder. If they attempt to claim otherwise later, deposit the check. That memo line becomes legally interpretive. It'll support your side. Will they fight? I asked. They may fight for pride. People often do. Her voice was steady, but I heard the warning beneath it. I wasn't dealing with a family conflict. I was dealing with a narrative war. A war in which they'd spent decades training. A war I just realized I needed to win. I booked my ticket to Chicago that afternoon. Not Phoenix, not the exile they planned. I forwarded the details to Marisol and to Daniel's assistant, confirming my arrival for the onboarding week. Then I sat on my bed with my phone in my hand, staring at Vanessa's video again. The comments, the sympathy, the dramatics, and I felt something inside me change, not anger, not vengeance, a shift, a pivot, from victim to witness to architect. If they wanted a story, I would give them one. Not a dramatic monologue, not a screaming match, not an emotional spectacle. Just the record. The truth, documented, time-stamped, undeniable. And then, for the first time in my entire life, I realized I didn't have to convince them. I only had to outlive their version. Before I closed the app, I whispered something to myself, not a vow, not a threat, just a quiet sentence, steady as bedrock. They built a stage. I'm building the archives. The news broke at 9:03 a.m. I was in a rideshare headed toward O'Hare, suitcase on the seat beside me, Chicago boarding pass tucked into my jacket pocket. My phone buzzed once, then twice, then kept vibrating until I switched it to silent. At first, I thought something had happened to my flight. Then I saw the notification. Forbes, Verdant Horizon acquires FieldSense in $8. 3M Deal founder Lauren Pierce to lead new sustainable systems division. The headline was clean. The subheadline even cleaner. No embellishments. No drama, just truth public, stamped, irreversible. A photo of me at the demo field last spring filled the screen, me kneeling in the dirt, calibrating one of the early sensors. Not glamorous, but real, mine. My chest tightened not with pride, but with a kind of grief I still can't fully name. Grief for the girl who spent years shrinking herself so her family wouldn't be inconvenienced by her ambition. Grief for the woman who still wondered whether she deserved to take up space. The car merged into traffic. I stared out at the highway, morning sun flickering over the hood, and let my phone buzz itself hoarse. The first voicemail came from my father. Not a hello, not congratulations, just Lauren. Call me immediately. There's confusion regarding the article. Confusion, as if facts could get confused. The second voicemail was my mother. Lauren, darling, we didn't know. Why didn't you share this sooner? We've been worried sick about you. Worried sick. Last night they planned to ship me to Phoenix like unwanted freight. Now they were worried. The third voicemail was Vanessa, her voice thin and tight, an actor whose spotlight had suddenly gone dark. Lauren, wow. Forbes? You should have told us. People are asking questions. Can you call me? Immediately. Like, not later, now. The rideshare driver glanced at me through the mirror. Good news? Something like that, I murmured. By the time I reached my gate, the world around my family was already shifting. My father's colleagues were asking why he'd never mentioned his daughter had sold a company. My mother's charity circles wanted me to speak about sustainable agriculture at their spring luncheon. Vanessa's DMs, once full of followers praising her bravery, now filled with, "Wait, you said she was struggling? This doesn't match your video. Why didn't you hype your sister? This is huge." Narratives crumble fastest under pressure, and Forbes was a boulder. I sat down, opened my laptop, and watched silent, steady as their version of me unraveled. The first real crack came when Vanessa deleted her intervention video. No apology, no explanation, just gone. But the internet never forgets. Screenshots circulated immediately. Comparisons, commentary, speculation. In a single morning, the story flipped. I wasn't the burden anymore. I was the one who had risen despite them. It should have felt triumphant. Instead, it felt quiet again. Success is never loud when you've spent your life being told to whisper. At 10:14 a.m., an email arrived, this time from a law firm I didn't recognize. Pierce, Dalton, and Reeves. Subject line, family investment claim field sense. I breathed in slowly. So this was how they wanted to play it. The document attached was 3 pages, formal, polished, confident in its audacity. It stated, my family had supported field sense. The $5,000 check constituted initial seed investment. They were entitled to 30% of the acquisition proceeds. 30%, not 3%. Not a token. A full 30. I scrolled to the signature line. My father's attorney. Not my father. Cowards outsource their cruelty. I read the memo line on the check sitting next to my laptop. Fresh Start Fund, not investment, not seed round, not equity agreement, just the 2 words they had written when they thought I was worthless. It was almost poetic. The gate agent announced pre-boarding. People stood. Bags rustled. Life moved around me. I opened my camera app, snapped a clean photo of the check, memo line crisp and readable. Then I took another photo. And another. Paper doesn't lie. Memo lines don't bend. Receipts don't gaslight. I stood, walked to the service counter, endorsed the check on the back, and deposited it through my bank app. 2 taps. 1 confirmation. The moment the funds cleared, the narrative locked into place. Their check wasn't an investment. It was closure. A final payment. A severing. An ending they themselves had authored. I forwarded the deposit screenshot to their law firm with a single sentence. Thank you for confirming this matter is resolved. All future inquiries may be directed to my legal counsel. CC. Marisol. Family group email. Then I put my phone on airplane mode. Some victories don't need an audience. Some boundaries don't need explanation. The flight was smooth. Chicago greeted me with cold Air and gray skies, the kind I've always loved. I took a cab to the Verdant Horizon building, a tall glass tower overlooking the river. Daniel met me in the lobby. "Big morning?" he asked, smiling gently, not pushing. "You could say that." "Well," he said, handing me my badge, "it's your story now. You get to tell it however you want." My throat tightened. No one had ever said that to me before. We rode to the 32nd floor in comfortable silence. My new office wasn't large, but it had a window, a sturdy desk, and a small plaque already waiting. Lauren Pierce, Director, Sustainable Systems Director. Not disappointment, not burden. Not failure needing relocation, Director. At 4:12 p.m., after onboarding meetings and document signings, I stepped into the restroom to breathe, tired, relieved, human. When I glanced at my phone, airplane mode was still on. I turned it off. Messages flooded in instantly. 10 from Vanessa, 7 from my mother, 5 from my father. 1 caught my eye. "Lauren, you misunderstood. We were only trying to help. Call us. We can discuss percentages." Percentages. Even now, they reduced me to numbers that benefited them. I deleted the message. Not out of spite, out of survival. Because some people don't seek reconciliation. They seek reclamation. Of you. Of your labor. Of your identity. But I wasn't theirs to rewrite anymore. I washed my hands, dried them slowly, and looked at myself in the mirror. For the first time, I didn't see the forgotten daughter. I saw the woman who kept going. Alone, unnoticed, uncelebrated, and still made something real. When I stepped out of the restroom, Daniel waved me over. "You ready to meet the team?" I nodded. Behind me, my phone vibrated with another message. I didn't look back. When a story collapses, you don't stand in the rubble. You walk out and start building. The first real snow arrived 2 weeks after I moved to Chicago. Light at first, little flecks melting on my coat, then heavier, turning the river into a gray ribbon lined with white edges. I watched from my apartment window, holding a mug of tea between my palms, the city quiet in a way Los Angeles never was. For the first time in years, I felt something unfamiliar. Peace that didn't feel like waiting for the next blow. At Verdant Horizon, the days filled quickly with meetings, site visits, model reviews, strategy sessions. Not one person called my ideas hobbies. Not one person implied I was fragile. Not one person told the story of my life for me. On the second Friday, our team visited a research farm outside the city. After hours of reviewing data plots and sensor performance, we gathered in the barn for coffee. The air smelled of hay and cold metal. I laughed at something one of the engineers said, a bright, unforced laugh. I couldn't remember the last time I'd heard myself sound like that. Later that night, walking back to my apartment, snow crunching under my boots, I realized something that made me stop mid-step. I wasn't bracing anymore. I wasn't waiting for criticism. I wasn't preemptively explaining myself. I wasn't shrinking to make anyone comfortable. Trauma teaches you to live in defense mode. Healing starts the minute you realize you no longer need to. My family didn't stop trying. In fact, they doubled down. Voicemails turned sugar sweet. Texts sounded concerned. Emails grew long and elaborate pages of justification, memory revision, regret laced with accusation. "Lauren, your sister only wanted what was best? You misunderstood our intentions. We've always supported you. You just never saw it. You should have included us. We deserve to be part of your success. We deserve something. Deserve, the most dangerous verb in any family dispute." My lawyer responded to the legal messages. I responded to none. It wasn't anger. I wasn't trying to punish them. It was boundary. For years, my voice had been background noise in my own story. Now, it was a lead instrument, and I refused to let anyone tune it for me. Still, even with distance, I wasn't immune to old habits. One night, after another long email from my mother insisting they had invested their hearts and hopes in me, I sat on the carpet and cried quietly. Not because I wanted them back, but because I finally accepted they had never been mine to win. Some families love through control, some through image, some only when you match their script, and some, like mine, love you best when you stay small. Knowing the truth doesn't erase the hurt, but it does set you free. The holidays approached quickly. Chicago dressed itself in lights, bridges glowing, shops warm behind frosted windows. People carried boxes of ornaments and wreaths. Couples sipped hot cider along the river. I bought a small tree from a sidewalk vendor and carried it home myself. It leaned a little. So did I. We were a good pair. On Christmas Eve, I invited the people who had shown up for me without condition. Dr. Harper brought cinnamon bread still warm from the oven. Eli from the data team brought a mismatched set of mugs he insisted had perfect coffee geometry. Mara from partnerships arrived last, balancing two pies that looked too perfect to touch. We crowded around my tiny dining table, 4 chairs, 1 borrowed stool, and ate like we had known each other for years. No one mentioned failure. No one compared me to anyone else. No one filmed anything for clout. No one told my story for me. Chosen family doesn't need to match your blood, only your truth. After dessert, Dr. Harper raised a glass. To new beginnings, she said softly, and to building the life they told you couldn't. Warmth spread through me like a slow sunrise. This simple table with its mismatched plates and uneven spected candles felt more like home than any Pierce mansion ever had. Later that night, alone, I walked to the bathroom to wash up. That was when I saw it again, the framed check hanging beside the towel rack. $5,000, Fresh Start Fund. Their last attempt at control, my first act of liberation. It wasn't anger that made me frame it. It wasn't mockery. It wasn't spite. It was remembrance. A reminder that I didn't rise because of them, I rose without them, despite them, beyond them. A reminder that sometimes the seed people give you isn't hope, it's dismissal. And sometimes that dismissal becomes the exact fuel you need to grow past the limits they set. I touched the frame lightly. They called it seed money, I whispered. Turns out, they were right. They just never expected the tree would grow this far from their garden. 2 days after Christmas, a voicemail arrived from my mother. Her voice trembled, not with sorrow, but with realization. It's Christmas, and we miss our daughter. I listened to the whole message. Every second, every sigh, every carefully chosen word meant to tug at the heart that had once bent so easily. Then I quietly pressed delete. Not to punish, but to protect. Because healing sometimes looks like forgiveness and sometimes it looks like silence. Silence can be a boundary. Silence can be a door. Silence can be a beginning. For the first time in my life, my silence belonged to me. On the last night of the year, I walked out onto my small balcony. Snow drifted down in soft spirals, settling on the railings like powdered sugar. The city below glowed warm and bright. I leaned on the railing and breathed in the cold, crisp air. I thought about every moment that had brought me here, the science fair plaque, the Fresno collapse, the Prescott humiliation, the intervention dinner, the check, the flight, the Forbes headline. Each one had tried to break me. None of them had succeeded. I had survived every story they wrote about me. Now I was writing my own. And as the clock struck midnight, as fireworks bloomed over the river, I whispered the lesson that had taken me a lifetime to learn. Life isn't about begging for a seat at someone else's table. It's about building your own and choosing, with intention, who gets to sit there.